أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace and blessings of Almighty Allah be upon each and every one of you. So we will start this seminar with a short recitation from the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. Brothers and sisters, I would like to welcome you once again to our series of workshops on marriage in Islam. Alhamdulillah, we had our first session last week, and today we are having our second session, inshallah, which is under the title of The Big Day. However, before we get on to those items about and the information about and reviewing the last week's workshop, I would like to first and foremost make a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we are located on the traditional territory of the many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse peoples. We acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory now called Ontario. We are thankful to be able to work and live in these territories. We are thankful to the First Nations, the Métis and the Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to contribute to the strength of Ontario and to all the communities across the province. We encourage you to take a moment to reflect, acknowledge, and appreciate these contributions. Now, very briefly, I need to introduce Ansaar Foundation. Ansaar Foundation is the one that has been organizing these workshops. Ansaar Foundation was founded in 2004. It's a registered Canadian charity which aims to reduce poverty and empower lives. It serves people of all faiths, races, origins, ethnicities, abilities, and gender. It runs programs for seniors, women, youth, new immigrants, and many more. Programs such as Adopt a Family, Free Homework Club, Feeding the Homeless, Breaking the Taboo, a mental health series, Iftar in a Box, and Digital Literacy for Seniors, along with Cybersecurity for Youth, among many other programs, serve the community and have been very highly successful. Ansaar on Wheels will be the first of its kind in Toronto and perhaps in Canada, a truck where we will go out to feed the homeless and support the needy. And so before we get into this, the workshop itself, I would like to make a disclaimer here that all views presented here are those of the individuals and may not necessarily be the views of Ansaar Foundation. With the nature of the topic, such as marriage in Islam, there may be more than one ruling or opinion regarding an issue. For any personal issues, please refer to your Imam for any clarifications that you would like to have. Now, moving on, to the workshop. So every 36 seconds, and I say every 36 seconds, there is a marriage that happens in the US. That is every 36 seconds. That's about 230 marriages every hour, as I had mentioned last week. But if you just reflect on it, from the time we started our workshop a few minutes ago to now, no less than 5 divorces have taken place in the US. No less than 5 divorces that have taken place in the US. There is a divorce every 42 seconds that takes place in the US. We are just coming out of the pandemic, and as a result of the various types of lockdowns and restrictions, we may be in for the largest increase in divorces. According to Rutgers University National Marriage Project, the American divorce rate before the pandemic was close to 50%, and in Canada, the divorce rate among Muslims was about 37%, and that's according to the Sound Vision website. Studies have shown that lack of commitment, unrealistic expectations, and lack of preparation for marriage as most common reasons for divorce. It is therefore paramount to make the right, informed, and wise decisions before you select your partner and say yes. Hence, these workshops on marriage in Islam, which are meant to inform, educate, and prepare couples to lead a productive and blessed matrimony. So as we have said in the past, there's going to be a series of 5 workshops. The last week, we had the first workshop, which was focused on premarital. So what we have decided to do is go on a journey from premarital and identifying if you are ready for marriage, you're ready to get married, to choosing a spouse, to getting to relevant questions, to the big day pre-nikah requirements, and talking about the reception, whether it's going to be micro reception, micro wedding, or a macro wedding. And then we will talk about life after nikah. We will also talk about my rights and your obligations, you know, some of the important things that you should know and you should be aware of. And finally, in the 5th workshop, we will be talking about, is your marriage missing that spark? And a Muslim woman's option to seek talaq. And then finally prepare for advanced care preparation. And that has to do with the will and power of attorney. So it's a series of workshops. And so today is going to be an important day. And we will be focusing on the nikah aspect of it, and the organization of the good things, the walima and the reception, and we'll talk about that as well. But first, let me introduce our presenters today. As you are aware, Imam Dr. Abdul Hai Patel, I would like to introduce him as our first panelist. Imam Patel needs no introduction, really. He needs no introduction. Arguably, he's one of the most recognizable Muslim faces during the many government, interfaith, and social services events. Imam Dr. Abdul Hai Patel has been serving as an imam and community leader for 52 years in Canada. He's a founding member of many organizations such as Canadian Council of Imams, Ansaar Foundation, and Muslim Children's Aid and Support Services. He has served in many various high-profile positions. He has been a commissioner of Ontario Human Rights Commission, He has been a trustee of Toronto District School Board in Scarborough. He is currently a Muslim chaplain at the University of Toronto, York Regional Police, and a member of Canadian Association of Police Chaplains. Imam Patel is a recipient of Governor General and Ontario government's awards for community service and Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. He holds a doctorate degree from the Canadian Institute of Islamic Studies. Let me introduce Sister Rufaida Muhammad. Sister Rufaida Muhammad is a social worker and non-profit organizational strategist. Currently, she works as a mental health clinician at the Trillium Health Partner. She has previously worked for a number of non-profit organizations and has developed international workshops in mental health and web therapy platforms. And finally, my name is Dr. Abdul Hamid Hathiani, and I've completed my PhD from the University of Toronto and have served in the social service sector for over 30 years. So with that said, we have introduced ourselves. We would like that you introduce yourself now. Tell us your name, please. And there's no compulsion. Anybody can volunteer. Please tell us your name and tell us what has been your best wedding experience and why. Anybody? Feel free, please.
Nobody wants to volunteer. You can bring the screen up. People joining.
Anybody wants to volunteer?
I guess they're waiting to be married. So maybe
Let's have somebody from the audience here, because we have both the audience here as well as people who have joined in online. Anybody from the audience who would like to introduce themselves?
Go ahead.
Brother?
My name is Kasam, and just a brief about my wedding experience, a good wedding experience.
It doesn't have to be your wedding experience, it could be any wedding experience, right? But it's good that you're sharing your wedding experience. A wedding experience. Okay, good.
What comes to my mind is a wedding I attended, and it was very straightforward, very simple, no complications, no bells and whistles and all that. It was perfectly organized, straight into the nikah, and then the walima after that. And it was not a very full of speeches and all the fancy things that we normally see in different weddings. So that has been a good experience for me.
Really following the sunnah.
Yeah,
Yes.
following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Keep it simple, right?
Keep it simple.
Good. Anybody else? Anybody from who is joined in online? Unmute yourself and please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, this is Abdul Rahim from Nairobi. Dr. Hamid Hathiani, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Oh, good to hear your voice, Abdurrahim. How are you, sir?
Alhamdulillah, all well. And mashallah, it's a very good initiative. I've been looking forward to such kind of, talks. And it's really good to be part of this. Alhamdulillah, personally, I'm having a great time with my wedding, and my marriage has been, alhamdulillah, very, very happy so far. But yes, we have been seeing quite a lot happening, quite a lot of issues, and over the time. So it would be good actually to come and have a talk with you, have a chat with you, and understand better on how we can go about having a better experience. And even maybe if we could actually help others as well solve their problems within their marriages as well. So
Thank,
God bless you. May Allah give you more, and inshallah, looking forward to the to this experience, the online workshop experience for the marriages as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abdurrahim, for your insight and your thoughts. That's the idea. You know, by sharing our experiences, we would like people to have better experiences themselves. You know, it is through sharing of info. Nobody has the monopoly of all the information or all the answers, but it is through sharing of the information that we can enhance our lives and enhance our relationships, inshallah.
Correct. Like I said, you know, it's you know, a marriage is not always perfect, and nothing is perfect. You need to work at it. So definitely, inshallah, we'll move on and let's hear what you have to say.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much. Anybody else who would like to introduce themselves?
Don't be shy.
Sister, you want to introduce yourself? Just introduce yourself and let us know a wedding that you went to, which you found to be really good.
I can't say about the wedding, but maybe I can say about my own parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
My dad had fallen in love with my mom, like when he went to do an audit in my uncle's place. And he did the Islamic way, what he said. He sent a proposal to his friend, to my uncle. And my uncle was interested at that time because he saw a bright future. My dad was a CRT student at that time. And his wedding wasn't so like nowadays that he has, but his marital life was successful, I think. So
Yeah.
35 years of successful marital life he had. And one thing he taught me that he used to call me Ma. The Ma in this world, nothing is more complicated than a marital life. The person who is successful in he or her marital life will be successful in every field.
Very good.
Jazakallah. That's a really good point that you make, sister. Nothing is more complicated than the marital life. It's interesting, right? And again, as we said, this is a process. This is what we are trying to do here is share some information so that people can have a better, marital life, a better marital bliss, inshallah.
In our dad's time and now, there has been an immense change.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for these changes, marriages are breaking up a lot.
That's why we choose these workshops, really, that to guide people and let them have the proper information so that they know what they are going into.
Yeah.
And because many have come into Canada from other countries, there is always a lot of conflict of culture, faith, and denomination. Yeah.
Culture, but from my own life experience, one thing I'll definitely say, it's your, the roots.
Yeah.
Your ancestors' roots, how they have been brought up, because the word gene, genetic, it will pass on to the next generation. So this is another reason that marriages are breaking up.
Yeah. We will talk about that, inshallah. I can see another, our Qari Sahib here who has raised his hand. Qari Sahib, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself. Qari Shahinoor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam rahmatullah.
Qari Shahinoor from Toronto. Two experiences I can share, the most enjoyable wedding experiences and the most unpleasant wedding experiences. The most unpleasant are the ones that are overly extravagant and just drag on and on and on, and all these speeches and everybody praising the bride and the groom when they should be praising Allah as a priority, not Allah's creation. Those are the worst experiences I've seen, and examples, the list goes on. And the best ones that I've seen and experienced are the ones that are simple and follow the Quran and Sunnah to a T, that they're straight to the point. We have the nikah, we have a starting with the Quran recitation that is done correctly, that is. And then the walima, exactly according to what Rasulullah ﷺ has showed us, and the method that he has taught us. Those are the best experiences that I've really enjoyed.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much, Qari Sahab, Qari Shahinur, for those simple and beautiful and succinct words. MashaAllah. So, moving on, anybody else who wants to introduce themselves before I move on?
These are things I've always heard. There's never been this.
Okay, so moving on. So in the last workshop, there were, I just want to very briefly review the last workshop and move on to this workshop here. In the last workshop, we talked about why marriage. You know, we referred to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as to why marriage. And Imam Saab explained very well, you know, what was the reason for marriage. Sister Rufaida also explained some of the characteristics one should have in regards to choosing a partner. So some of the characteristics that we mentioned were that are good to consider when choosing a spouse are, and I'll repeat those, summarize them: righteousness, attraction, uprightness in character, good lineage, personality, confidence, humor, forgiveness, honesty, language, and honesty. So these are some of the characteristics that we looked at, and some of the cultural and language compatibilities we looked at were language, homesick, food, cultural ceremonies, children intensifying differences and coming to an understanding of that, and religion and the various sects that we discussed about and we talked about. Today, the last time, we missed out on some important questions to ask before making that final decision. And so today, we will try and get into that, inshallah. So we talked about, you know, many aspects the last time, and we sort of came to an understanding that, okay, now that you have understood what marriage is all about, are we ready to take the plunge and say, I want to get married now? And so once you are ready to take that plunge and say, I want to get married now, then what? Where are you going to look for that spouse? And it's important that you understand where you're going to look for the spouse and how you're going to find the right match for you. Now, very briefly, I must mention that here in Canada, we are living in the Western world. We as Muslims are a new community. We are still building our institutions. We are still building our relationships. We are still building, you know, the interactions that we have and that we should have. But back home, where we come from, whether we come from Africa, whether we come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, there the systems have been set for centuries. Our aunts and uncles and our khalas, whether we come from the Middle East or wherever we come from, they have been established for centuries. And so when somebody is ready for marriage, it is not very difficult for them to find a partner. And there are other institutions there that have already been established through which they can find the right and suitable partner for themselves. However, coming to Canada, it is different, or to the Western world. we are still a new and growing community. We are still establishing our systems here. We are still establishing our institutions here. And so sometimes it becomes a little bit difficult to find the right partner. So where does one look for a spouse? Looking for a spouse here in Canada, for example, can be like a maze, you know. And if you are looking for a spouse, it is like a maze, as I said, and so you need to see what is going to be your best approach. What is going to be your
Should be this slide.
your better approach.
Hmm.
All right.
No, we are not there yet to tie the knot.
And so we need to look at it,
This is
and
the-
also need to have somebody who can guide us.
No, go back.
Somebody
you're
who
at the
can
end.
guide us
You're at
as
the end.
to, you know, where to look for
This is the last
for the right spouse. And so when we are looking at the spouse, one slide before.
It's not the right slide. that we had.
Some technical glitch here, sorry.
Yeah.
Go back. Yes,
No.
please. Yes,
This is it. This,
go back again.
this is that's
Okay.
the one. Yeah.
So as I said, it's like a maze. And so you need some guidance. Like just in a maze, you see that the platform there, somebody can guide the person if they are lost, or, you know, how to get to the end result. And so the first and the foremost thing is for one person, especially from here in Canada, in the US, and there might be some people joining from the US as well, is to identify, where are you going to look for a spouse? Are you going to look for a spouse here in Canada, in the US, back home, or some other country? And I know that people here have been looking at other countries to look for a spouse. For example, there have been here people who have looked for a spouse in North Africa. Others have gone and looked at for their spouse in the Middle East, or back home where their forefathers came from. And so you need to decide where are you going to look for a spouse? Where are you really going to look for a spouse? Whether it's going to be here or whether it's going to be somewhere else. So that's something that you need to identify first. The other thing that you need to do is, after having identified that, you need to fall back on your close ones, your family, your relatives. Your family is so important for you to guide you in finding the right spouse, you know, because it's your family that has been with you all along since you were born. And so your family can guide you into, you know, and they have connections as well. So let your families guide you to finding a spouse. Some people also tend to looking for a spouse in the organizations that they are involved in, whether it is university-related organizations, whether it is work-related organization, or whether it is some place where they have been volunteering and socializing. So that's somewhere that they can look for. The fourth place that they can look for, which is becoming very common here, is through social media. There are many platforms which are available where one can look for a spouse through social media. But one has to be very careful. One has to be very careful. And I would say, when you are looking into for a spouse through social media, please proceed with caution. Please proceed with caution. And so once we have identified the spouse, where you're going to look for a spouse, and you have identified a good prospect, you know, the question comes, what should I know about that person? what are some relevant questions that I need to discuss before saying yes? What is it that I should be aware of about the other person before I actually said yes? And so you are confused and you are not very sure whether to say, will you marry me or not? And that's why you see on the slide, it's not very clear. It's still not very clear in your mind whether you should accept the person. And so what we have here is a series of questions that we want to suggest to you for you to find out and ask the other partner, so that you are aware and so that you can make the right, informed, and a wise decision before you say yes. Now, there are many questions that have been placed out. Some really good questions have been formulated by Imam Majid and Salma Abu Ghidairi. They have a book on 100 premarital questions to ask. Then Sheikh Abdurrahman Ibn Yusuf Mungera, he has some really good questions that he has identified to ask the other partner before saying yes in his book, Healthy Muslim Marriage. And so see, these are some of the really important and good questions to ask the other partner, the other person, before you say yes. And so I'm going to go through a few of them for you to be aware, so that you can take these into stride and get information about the other person. And the first and important one is, are you married now or have you been married before? And it's an important one because there are many times, especially in this part of the world, people don't know, they meet for the first time, and people have come from their home countries and they come here and there is no background information. And it's important for you to ask that question, have you been married before? Or are you currently married? There are people who don't even inform that they are married when they've already been married back home. And they come here and they want to find a partner here without informing the other person, the person that, yes, they have a wife back home and they have children back home as well. So that's an important question that to ask. Another important question.
I have seen a number of examples like that.
Yes, we have seen we see those examples, and that's the reason we have brought those questions, and those are placing those questions up front here. It's so important before you go anywhere. I just want to know, and if the person is married, that's when you need to identify whether you want to continue or you don't want to continue. Another important question to ask is, what's your purpose in life? And that's so important. What's your purpose in life? And then, what do you see in me that makes you marry me? Right? What do you see in me that makes you marry me? And that's an important thing to ask, because is it the beauty? Is it wealth? Is it your professionalism? Somebody might say, I love your hair, but knowing that down the road, the hair may grow gray. And so, things can change. And so you need to know, identify what is it in you that the person is attracted, and why is that person attracted to you? And another important question to ask is, what role does religion play in your life? Because that's an important question. For some people, it depends. They might be very religious, others may not be as religious. And so you need to be clear, into what you're getting into. Right? You need to know what you're getting into, because after the wedding, one person says, no, I want you to do or dress up this way. And the other person says, I never expected that. And that can be the starting of disharmony amongst the couples. And so it's very important for you to identify that. An important question here, how do you visualize yourself in the role of a husband or the wife? And that's important, because some people might say, and we have had this type of cases, Imam Sahib. We get this type of, and we come across so many of such cases where the spouse is a professional, like the wife is a professional, and the husband and wife, after they get married, the husband says, no, sorry, you can't work. And the person may be a professional person, and she would say, hey, what do you mean I can't work? And or the husband might say, you know what, this is what I want my wife to be like. Or the husband might say, I want my wife to work. And when the wife thinks that she'll get married and she may not have to go out to work. So these are some important questions that you need to clarify and understand before you say yes. Another important question is, how do you plan to support your spouse? And that's important as well. How does one plan to support the spouse? Right? And some people might say, you know what, I expect you to take care of yourself. I will take care of myself. This is a matrimony. This is a joint, it's a family coming together. And there has to be an understanding as to how we are going to lead our lives.
Just one point to clarify, in Islam, it is husband's obligation to wife. So when the spouse is mentioned here, it refers to wife, that the wife does not have to support the husband unless it's really necessary.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's the husband's obligation to support the wife.
And that must be very clear. People need to understand. And sometimes the husband forces the wife to, do something that it may not be agreeable to both of them.
Yeah.
And so under Islamic laws, it is the husband's responsibility to take care of the wife and the children. Right.
Dr. Saab, sorry to cut you off.
An important question again would be, what's your employment background? Now that employment background is important because through that employment background, one can identify, the person's employment history. They can identify whether the person is committed to their job or not. They can identify whether the person has been switching jobs one after one another, And so that's something that we need to have some clarification before we say yes. I believe there's a question. Yes, Karisa.
Sorry to jump in. If you can go back for a moment, Dr. Abdul Hai made a very important point regarding financial support to the spouse, that we are in agreement that it is the husband's responsibility to take the lead on that particular point. However, I've come across many cases with my life experience that it's not clear as to what is the husband's responsibility. Some people think that it's the husband's responsibility to financially take care of everything, including giving her brand name, whatever she wants. Whereas what exactly is the Islamic criteria, and according to Islamic guidelines, is what is the husband's responsibility and where do you draw the line?
Thank you so much, Karisa, for the question. It's a very relevant question and an important question. And Imam Abdul Hai Patel will be addressing that a little later, inshallah.
Either in this or the next workshop.
He will either address it today, inshallah. And if not, then we have a section devoted to that in the next workshop as well. So we will address that, and it's a very relevant and important question. Another important thing to be aware of is the financial obligations one might have. And it's very important to know the obligations beforehand, because what's happening and what we have been hearing and we come across a lot of times, and that becomes the contention, a point of contention, that the spouse, sometimes one spouse comes and says, this person brings all or the husband brings the salary, and most of the salary is sent to XYZ, to support them, leaving out the support for the immediate family, the wife and the children. And we are seeing a lot of that as well. And so it is important to be aware of those financial obligations before even saying yes to the person. If somebody has made a commitment that I'm going to take care of XYZ because they are orphans or for whatever reason, or for it should be made aware, it should be made open, and people should be, be aware of them so that they can make an informed decision whether that would be acceptable to them or not.
It's not just XYZ. It is usually people have, sons have obligation with parents. They may be paying parents rent or mortgage. And money can be going to that as well, and not for the family, his own family, or dividing or subsidizing some other relative. So all these things, obligations must be known in advance, should be known in advance. So you can ask that question. So what are the financial obligations? Because that is also one of the causes for breakup of marriage that's happened. Just shuts up.
So sorry, and Imam Sahib was just telling me that in the middle of khutbah, sometimes the mic shuts off, and I think that's what happened. It's not a khutbah, but you know what? This is what happens sometimes. Technical glitches and technical difficulties that we can encounter. Anyway, going back to, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me now?
If not, just raise your hand.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so let's move on. I have a few more questions which are very important for us to be aware of before we say yes, right? And so we talked about financial obligations. What are your short-term and long-term goals? I mean, that will identify. You're going to lead for the rest of your life. You're going to be with this other person. So it's important for you to be aware of their short-term and long-term goals and share yours as well. These are my short-term goals. These are my long-term goals as well. It's very important for you to be aware of each other's short-term and long-term goals, as well as how do you manage conflict? How does the other person manage conflict, and how do you manage conflict yourself? These are important things to be aware of, because some people, you don't want, when there's a conflict, you start removing your shirt and start showing blows and things like that, which should never ever happen. But you know what, you need to be able to be aware of what is your style of resolving conflict. Is it moving away, finding a quiet place, talking to the person, being objective and talking about the issue and resolving the issue, making it into an issue rather than a person thing? So these are some important things for one person to be aware of. Another important point here, and especially here in Canada and in the US, is what's your immigration status? Because some people tend to marry the other person for the sake of immigration. And so it is important to know what's their immigration status and to be clear about that. And identify their friends as well, because your friends are who you are as well. It's important for you to be able to identify who are the friends. And if you look at their friends, you'll be able to see a reflection of this person in their friends as well. And so it's important for you to be able to identify who the friends are of the potential partner. And how well are they connected to the family or to the community? Are they very active in the community? They are not active in the community. They go to the masajid or to the masjid. the various masajids, which organizations are they involved in, and what are their interests and hobbies. It is very important to identify what their interests are. Somebody might say, my interest is to watch soccer every day, every Saturday and Sunday. And the wife might say, hey, that's the time for my shopping, and that's where the conflict sort of starts. And so it is important to be aware of these things from the beginning before you say yes. And you need to be comfortable to be able to say yes to whatever the responses are. Yes. Yeah. There's a point from the, there's a point from the floor here. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Not all men are honest about these things before getting.
Yeah, sure.
I'm saying this from my own life experience. I won't say who it is. It's a very sensitive patient, but I would say definitely, especially the men, they never say.
That's why I put these questions, yeah.
That's why it's important.
And eventually, maybe after the marriage, their true face comes out. They don't show that. They are just like those, Bollywood movies.
Yeah.
They are just, and then after the marriage, they show up. So is it the wife's fault?
No, we are not saying it. No, it's not the wife's fault.
Majority of the men blame it on the women.
These are the next 2 points that I'm going to make reflect what you're telling us. Okay, these are reflective of what you just said. So we talked about getting that information, right? Another very, very important point to make is, or to find out is there anything important? Are there any secrets that I should be aware of? Whether it is health, whether it is something else, is there something that others may not be aware of, and yet the person may be hiding? You need to be open, and you need to be able to identify and let the other person know what those secrets are, And then the final point is all these above information verifiable? Are they just saying it, or is that verifiable? And that's an important point. That the most important point is whatever they've told you, is that verifiable? There's a question here from those who are online. Please repeat what the sister from the floor said. Sorry. So what the sister said from the floor is, not everybody, reveals the information to the best, in the most truthful way. They hide information, and then after the fact, after the wedding, that's when it really comes out, and it becomes a bone of contention. It becomes an issue of conflict, and that's why you need to do your due diligence. It's so important, and that's the reason we have those last 2 points here. Any secrets, and is the above information, what we have talked about, is that information verifiable?
From life experience,
Yeah.
Eventually what happens is the female, the wife, who are sacrificing. They're giving in. And eventually, you know what happens? At one stage, maybe after 15, 16, 19, 20, 25, boom,
No.
she goes.
Yeah. So the sister is saying a lot of spouses, meaning wives, sacrifice, and after many years, the marriage then, becomes, it breaks up after many years of marriage. And that's an issue. And that is why we are bringing these points out right now, so that people are aware. When, there's a lot of couples who never asked these questions, who never found out about the other partner, who never found out or got to know about the other partner, some of the questions that we have addressed today. And these are some of the questions. If they were addressed earlier on, if they were, the information was shared, then the decision that was made would be a decision based on informed decision, and after a lot of good thought that has been given to those issues before the person then finally says, will you marry me? And that's an important thing.
One point I can add on this immigration status. Canadian immigration is a very valuable thing to many who want to come to Canada. And I have seen cases where people living in another country, but they're married in home country as well. And they come to Canada, like they're in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. And then they come here, they meet somebody, say, oh yeah, my friend has a daughter there in Canada to marry. Usually it's the women that they are looking for to get married, to get immigration, the men I'm talking about. And in one case, the nikah was done, and just even before the marriage was consumed, he said, tomorrow morning, let's make an appointment with immigration. So she got very suspicious. So why are this just got married and now he wants to make an immigration appointment? Because then they discovered that he was married with children in Dubai. So there are examples like that, that people don't ask questions. They don't verify. The last point that Dr. Abdul Hamid said, verifiable, that it is your duty to verify all the information, all the facts about the person you are making your life partner. So we'll continue. Yeah,
It's
more
very,
to
very
talk about.
important. And I must stress, these are relevant questions. These need to be clarified. In most instances, or in a lot of instances, these questions are not clarified, or the answers are not given at the forefront. And then this become issues of conflict and issues that can lead to a breakup of marriage. One final point before you say, will you marry me? One very final point, and it's an extremely important point, that all of us, all those people who are contemplating marriage should do is do istikhara. Istikhara, after you've answered all those, after you've gone through all this, then you need to do istikhara. And it's important that you istikhara before you finally say yes to will you marry me.
Is dowry a lot, like is it a mandatory in Islam as well?
We will come to that. That's a very good question, dowry, and we are talking of mahr.
Mostly Asian men, now, from my personal experience,
They are
they
demanding.
want, and if they don't get,
Yeah.
they abuse their wives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dowry and mahr, we will get into that. Imam Patel is going to address after the bio break. It's a very important, topic, and Imam Patel is going to address, issues around that as well, because there are people who don't even know what is mahr. All right, talking about dowry, people don't even know what is mahr. It's important that people should be aware and educated regarding the Islamic principles of marriage, and that's why we are holding this workshop, to educate, to inform, so that people can make informed decisions, for their future, for their life. It's to do with their life. It's not a one-time occasion, right?
Brother, why do they even educated men are doing this?
Well, this is the thing that we see. Our job is to, yeah.
It's not. It doesn't matter whether the person is educated or not. Is the person? How is the person in their iman and in their akhlaq, and how fair are they? It is not whether a person may have a big degrees. It doesn't matter. But these are important questions for both the spouse and both spouses to be aware of each other, so that they can make the decision before the wedding, not after the wedding. These are important things that people need to be aware of, so that they can make informed decisions. That is the point of holding this. We are trying to bring these issues to the forefront for people to be aware that, hey, you guys need to be aware of these things. You be careful. You do your due diligence before you say yes. Just don't say yes because you see the person and you like the person. You go into, saying yes, you go into the matrimony, and then you find out that there's a lot of other issues behind that person, right? So behind the curtains, yes. So that's the reason we are holding this workshop, to make you aware of some of these things and to educate and inform the community out here. Okay, so are you ready to tie the knot? And for that, I will ask Sister Rufaida. Sister Rufaida, if you can come in, please.
Are we going on a break or?
No, I will go on a break. After this, we'll soon go on a break.
Yeah.
After this session, this segment, we will go on a break. Pre-nikah and marriage preparation. Sister Rufaida, are you on?
I am on.
Please join. Yes, yes. You want to take on things to consider before marriage or nikah?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jazakallah, Imam Hai Patel as well. Jazakallah, Dr. Abdul Hamid. Really appreciate your insight and your guidance, mashallah. And so many participants asking incredibly rounded questions about what do I need to know prior to marriage, or what if somebody is lying about their background, or how do we choose an individual that's best suited to maybe our interests, or some of the things, that goals we want for ourselves. So really, really good discussion around looking for a spouse. So just taking the conversation just a wee bit further, we ask ourselves more specifically, the pre-nikah marriage preparation, what is marriage? And so, we kind of move towards an understanding that it's a formal union, meaning that it is a social union, meaning that it is a legal union, that is solidified by a legal binding contract, right? It's recognized by the government that these two individuals are married. And when we say formal union, society recognizes that these two people now belong to each other, right? They're off the market, so to speak, right? That family members, friends, community members, you go to a masjid, you say, oh yeah, there's so-and-so's wife, and there's, so-and-so's husband, or, they're really formally known in the community as belonging to one another. And so the union really does speak to other aspects of these two individuals, their lives. And that is that the union influences their state of economic growth, right? It also influences emotional and psychological contributors, right? It also influences biological contributors to their lives, right? It also influences like the social aspect of how they would conduct their lives moving forward. So when we kind of move towards contextualizing what marriage is, we realize that it's just more than, someone who really loves that exterior, that the person is handsome, that lady is, beautiful. It moves beyond those, physical attributes, the ones that are perhaps more tangible, to ones that are inward. And when I talk about, education, or previously questioned about education, or, income, or, financial stability, those are the tangible qualities perhaps of marriage as well. So, when we say we ask, what is marriage? It's multifaceted. And so I'm just reflecting on, the series of workshop, right? So previously, I'm just quickly touching on our premarital. Workshop 1 was about, choosing a spouse and some relevant questions. And of course, today we're talking about like the pre-nikah, requirements. Then we're moving into, the next workshop, number 3, is about the post-honeymoon, which looks at like key aspects of a successful marriage, and common problems that people encounter once they're married, and even duties and responsibilities. And lastly, we have workshops 4 and 5 that talk about respectable marriages or devilish divorces or prenuptials, and then capping it off with, number 5, which is making marriages everlasting, right? And so, if somebody's missing the spark in their marriage after 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, what does that mean? What does that convert into? What does that translate into for the sanctity of that family, for the sanctity of that marriage, for the relationship of that couple? So I'm making a point of noting these various workshops simply because it's incumbent on all of us to recognize that marriage is very much a process, that it's not just, the questions that have been listed, mashallah, which are very thorough, but it's a process of moving through this union, moving through this relationship over the next, maybe 45, 50, maybe 75 years of your life. And so as you journey through the process, boundaries change, relationships change, all the factors that you thought were important in the beginning are no longer important, but other factors come into play, which are important. So, the workshop is really geared to giving you a holistic kind of in-depth look at what marriage is. Maybe 5 years in, your husband, your in-laws are now, elderly. And so although it wasn't discussed in the very beginning, who's going to look after those elderly aging parents, it's now on the marriage table. What are we going to do about, looking after elderly parents? You work, I work, who's going to look after them? So now it becomes a topic of maybe. So if you have some really great foundational pieces to your marriage in the beginning, such as how decisions are going to be made, when do we agree to disagree, that we have different views, and how do we move towards resolving them? At what point do we move to external resources to help resolve those? At what point do we, look at the situation and find ways in which we, I give in a little bit, but you give in a little bit, and we find the middle ground, right? I know of a couple, just to segue, that made a point of never going to sleep in anger. So when there are issues, rather than going to bed angry, right? They kind of reach some form of resolution. Perhaps it's not perfect, but they resolve towards moving to a point where they say, you know what? We will make these decisions based on these factors. We agree that we're going to resolve them in this manner. Let's put some more thought into it over the next couple of days, and let's come back to the discussion after we've had a chance to process, right? Process our own feelings and emotions in like what's at stake here. And then we'll and they resolve it that way, and they never go to bed, they never go to sleep angry at each other, right? So it's the foundational pieces of the marriage that really help to like solidify and carry it forward for a number of years, because those essential pieces in the very beginning are in place for a reason, right? And it's the principles that they continue to practice that really allows them to sustain the marriage long term. So slide number 23, things to consider before a marriage, the marriage, the nikah, we have some bullet points here of some general items to consider, just highlighting that, these are points, but there could be many. And, the workshops are really geared around this understanding of having a discussion about marriage, right? Maybe isolating some key components that we are now recognizing for the very first time. We've never really explored it before. And so these are discussion items. And perhaps there are many that are not listed here, but we definitely want to highlight some. And so, this discussion will continue to happen. And even when the workshop is over, you may circle back to have a thought about, oh, you know what, I was taking notes and this thought came up. I really want to circle back to Imam Hai Patel and ask his opinion on something. So just be mindful that it is a process. So one of the points to consider, sorry, before your nikah, and of course, even choosing a spouse, and or even that in the process of having a conversation about that is, getting parents and guardians permission. And when we look at our Islamic tradition, and and definitely some of our cultural pieces of our who we are, where we've come from, how we've been raised culturally, getting your parents' permission, or a loved one. So let's say your parents are no longer alive, and so you go to an elderly sister or brother, who's a guardian for you, or maybe you're much older than a younger brother or sister who's already married, and you're still considering that their input is valuable to you. It is really about, it's a formality, right? And it's an honorable formality, because it's about receiving the blessings of that loved one, right? It is about situating this formal approach of getting someone's permission or blessings in our tradition of honoring that person, honoring and maintaining good relationships. And that is a critical aspect of who we are as Muslims, because it is about discussing with them any kind of concerns that they have, right? Honoring and respecting their wishes. Because let's face it, our loved ones, family members, parents, brothers, sisters, they sit at our marriage table, right? They have a vested interest in our well-being. And more so than that is that, maintaining good relations with those that are closest to us is about investing in our future. And I'm talking about the akhirah, like our future in the future, like in life after death. But also, it's incumbent on us as Muslims to preserve good relations with our relatives, right? So yeah.
Sorry, Imam Patel has a point on that.
Yeah, Bismillah.
If you can add on to that.
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay. A question may be asked that, is it necessary to have parents' permission? Now, as Sister Rafeda has said, that it is a good relations with parents and guardians, that maybe that to get their agreement on it. But according to the Hanafi school of thought, any person over the 18 years, both man or woman, they are free to marry. And according to the Shafi'i school of thought, that yes, parents' permission is, father's permission is necessary. That is called. That without that, the girl would not be able to marry, and that father gives her consent. However, the question I always pose, that if there is a disagreement by parents, say, listen, why you need parents' agreement is your children has to have a grandparents. Grandparents' relations are important for their upbringing, especially if they are living in the same neighborhood, same city, or same homes. So that helps a lot. And in a country like Canada, where if husband and wife both work, grandparents always become unofficial or by default babysitters as well. And that by choice, more or less. And because grandparents is there something, grandchildren are really valuable jewelry, I would say, for the grandparents to enjoy. That's why it is important. So just to clarify about the permission from the parents is very important. Yeah. Or agreement. Yeah.
There is also a question from the floor.
Yeah.
Just one sec. Can you put it up, please? Yeah, there's a question. Can you see it?
So the question is, before when we get the parents' permission, everybody agrees, and then after marriage, the parents are changed their decisions. So how do you address that?
So the question is, for everybody's
Agreement.
information, is that before the marriage, everybody agrees, the parents agree. And after the marriage, the parents disagree or start disagreeing, and there is conflict. How do you address that? And I'll refer that to Imam Patel if he wants to add.
Well, it depends on what disagreement it is, and something like we will be talking when we come to the walima part. That usually a lot of time there is disagreement of who keeps the gifts. And nowadays, usually it is the cash, not the gift boxes anymore. So he said, father would say, look, I have to pay for your reception. So disagreement starts right from the walima time. So these questions I will be talking more later on. That is, and some important slide that will come later on is on family relations after the marriage, how you balance your life. And I think Sister Rafela can add a lot to that about maintaining family relations, inshallah. So we'll just park that question for now.
Yeah, Sister Rufeda, if you want to add anything to that.
I think Imam Patel, mashallah, is more astute. I could just say in the recovery phase of when conflict happens, part of making sure that parents, that they are, part of the process perhaps, or that you may formally go to ask for permission from loved ones and family members, is that, they're always looking out for your best interest, right? Like we always take the goodness of people and put that at the primary focus, bar none. So we say, my parents, my brother, my sister, they're always looking out for my best interest. And so they may see something in that individual, that potential spouse to be, that doesn't really align with you. Maybe you don't see it right away. Sometimes it's a good opportunity to have a conversation about, do you see anything that, like it resonates with them that you don't particularly see? Do they see, maybe, you're having an opportunity to kind of like discuss, what it is that maybe you like or dislike about an individual, not as a means of causing issues in the future, but really figuring solution-focused mind resolved before the wedding. Or maybe it can be something that can be discussed so that, part of, we want to see our daughter. So, can we please make sure that, we have opportunities to visit you guys or you guys visit us? There's some certain things that can be identified as resolvable. I see a hand up and I'm going to circle back in 1 second. Certain things are like, living arrangements, right? So is it possible, to figure out, certain things that, living arrangements, maybe those can be resolved prior to the wedding, in which, we can sort out those pieces, right? And he or she has a condo, they're going to move out, but, like we're going to visit back, like, so just certain things. But then there are also, issues that are deal breakers. So, expectations that she's going to give up her education, right? Those are maybe deal breakers, right? So, or she's never going to work even though she's got a medical degree. So there are certain deal breakers, right? So you want to get to those prior to, and just contributing to that question, the expectation here moving forward is that everyone's going to change. Everyone in this marriage, is going to change. Absolutely, without a doubt. Their bodies are going to change. Their mindset's going to change. How they socialize is going to change. Personality is going to change. Everything is going to change, without a doubt. It is how we move and prepare for those changes that is the critical aspect of building a thriving marriage, a sustainable marriage, is knowing that things are going to change and accept the fact that that is going to happen. was a hand up. I wanted to get to that question. Sorry, Brother Kari Shah, did you have a question?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. It's Qari Shahinur from Toronto.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay, I just wanted to ask for you to elaborate a little bit more on parental and family involvement as it relates to the boundaries of Sharia and Islamic guidelines in comparison with culture. This is, I've been finding in my experiences that sometimes people think that the culture that they're following is actually what Islam teaches, when reality, it is not what Islam teaches us. Islam is a way of life. It's simple, straightforward, and that has been there perfected 1400 years ago. And culture is the manner in which our locality lives their lives. But the interconnection between Islam and culture, I've been finding, and I've been coming across situations where the line is supposed to be clear, but it's blurred to an extent that it is jeopardizing people's marriages. And even people that are looking to get married are getting confused, and parents are getting confused, children are getting confused. So can you clarify that? Where does this boundary lie? Even when it came to the subject about getting permission from a guardian, be it for the male or the female, but well, what does all of this mean as far as from an Islamic perspective, and where does the boundary lie? That this is the line, we don't cross it.
Yeah, fantastic question. I think Imam Hai Patel was actually, alluding to the understanding of the different schools of thought in terms of the word permission. So, in Hanafi fiqh, there's more of a leaning towards, being 18 and, having the authority or, state of mind and akal and knowledge to kind of like make that decision. Whereas Shafi's, that methodology or school of thought would lean towards having the father give permission, and in the absence of a father figure, that there was, somebody else who can be the representative as the wali. And so I will leave permission seeking in those aspects to Imam Hai Patel.
Well, even as far as permission, I understood where Dr. Abdul Habib Hai was saying. I'm not really focusing so much on where he was wanting to cover, but some more so towards what you were referring to as far as even before and after, and as the life goes on, how much should the parents be involved, or where it comes to a point where an example is I saw a case where the husband is not the final decision maker, the mother-in-law is. And it came to a point where the husband, unfortunately, is stuck with, but she's my mother, I can't say anything, I can't do anything. And next thing you know, the wife feels as though she's an unpaid maid in the home. And next thing you know, rather than being an environment of mawadda and rahma, it's an environment of a boxing match, because she is so frustrated and he's not doing anything, and he's stuck with this thinking that, but I can't say anything, I can't do anything because she's my mother, right? So and this and the thing is that from what I've observed is this comes from other cultures, but this is not what Islam teaches us. But people are thinking that cultural mentality is what Islam teaches us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brother Kari Shah is, I agree with that. It pins the husband, and, he has a double identity. He's a son and he's a husband, and he's in a rock and a hard place. He's between a rock and a hard place, because on the one hand, he's obligated to the rights of his marriage and his wife, but also on the other hand, he's obligated to the caregiving and the respectable relationship that he has to preserve with his mother. And so there has to be clear lines drawn between the obligations to his family, meaning his wife and his children and his home that he's now established. And then, of course, what his obligations in terms of caring for his parents. And that is, as you were qualifying it, and you took the words right out of my mouth, it's the lines become blurred, right? Because it's very difficult to discern. And often the culture dictates that, the parent may have like more of a say. But in light of the presentation and in light of the discussion, I would ask for your permission to circle back to this when Imam Hai Patel, and I will weigh in at that point. Would that be okay with you if we did that?
Yes, absolutely. That's fine. I made my point, but depending on how, let's let the thing flow, and then we can let it shed light on it at the appropriate time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm also mindful of that. We've been speaking now, we've been going as a collective for about an hour and 15 minutes. I do have just a few more points to finish off, but wondering if we should take the bio break now.
This was going to be the bio break time. So if you want to finish a few points, if it's going to be quick, that's fine. Otherwise, we go on a bio break at this time.
Yeah, I'm really,
5 minutes bio break for now.
I think so.
We will go into a bio break.
Yeah, I think so.
And come back at 1:35. I know that our workshops were supposed to be till 1:30. Seeing that the interest, the information, and the enthusiasm amongst the participants is so much, we will continue our presentation to about 2 o'clock, inshallah. So for everybody's sake, we will return in 5 minutes, and we will continue our workshop till 2 o'clock, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. 5 minutes, and we'll be back, inshallah.
Okay, so I think we're back now. And I am perhaps.
Mr. Rufeda, please go ahead.
Yep, okay, great. So just recapping, I'm going to try my best to just go very poignantly, quickly across the remaining slides. So we're on just perhaps the bullet points, the considerations before marriage. So education and, educate on laws of marriage and Islam. So, that runs into, what Imam Abdul Hai Patel is going to be looking into, but just, understanding, responsibilities of what the man should be doing, the husband, the wife, in terms of obligations. We discussed the opportunity to the male, provides for the family financially, whereas perhaps, the female, when we look at, our Islamic tradition, is there to support and nurture and raise the family, although both have a hand in that. In today's society, of course, we have both husbands and wives working, both raising children, both taking time off when the children, may have colds or flus, so the caregiving is equally shared. But we definitely recognize that, the financial responsibility of the well-being of the family relies on the husband, and then the caring and the nurturing of children and the family setting is on the wife. So matrimonial home and residence. So this is something that definitely is an aspect of wanting to clarify where people are going to live, how they're going to live. There may be a long-term plan. And as we know in today's society, with increased housing prices, there may be a plan that, both individuals are university students, as an example, doing, higher level education. And so they live in the basement apartment of one of the family homes, right? And then the plan is when they graduate, they're going to start working, saving money, maybe buy a condo, a townhouse, and so on and so on. So there could be a short-term plan, a long-term plan with regards to living accommodations, and then, who may be, part of those living accommodations in the future, right? So just having questions about what is the interim, what is the short-term plan, what is the long-term plan. Also be mentally and psychologically and physically ready. And so I just wanted to share my screen very quickly for a minute to just quickly point out, I'm not sure if I'm, yeah. So I'll just draw attention to this model. So this is called the biopsychosocial model. And just drawing attention to it, meaning that, when we think about the biological influencers of individuals and their lives, we have, genetic vulnerabilities, we know of physical health. When we think about the psychological influencers, we know self-esteem, coping skills, social skills, perhaps family relationships, past trauma, temperament. When we think about the social influences, we have peers, family circumstances, school, work. And then, of course, when we bring all these three spheres together, we get mental health. And so this affects, the efficacy of someone's ability to be a positive, participant in that marriage. And so I just wanted to draw attention to this very, very quickly. And then, sorry, I'm going back to the slides as we were covering. We have the sort out of the work schedule. So what does work mean, and what does the role of employment play in the marriage, and who's going to be working? So just asking, those kinds of questions. And we had kind of touched on it earlier when we had the listing of questions of, what those schedules look like. Maybe both individuals work, husband and wife. So who's looking after the kids? Who are the caregivers of the kids? So, having an understanding of what the expectation around work is. I provided an example of some of the deal breakers, earlier, perhaps moving out of province is a deal breaker because one of the partners, the husband or the wife, is the primary caregiver for elderly parents. So just having conversations about like what work will look like, what those schedules will look like, and then conflict resolution. So, you know, in which ways do we resolve conflict, right? At what point do we now kind of move to external resources? And yeah, sure, absolutely, Abdul Hai. Yes, so, you know, it's something that we will be discussing moving forward, but how do we resolve conflict specifically, and in ways in which the methods and approaches. And so do conflict get so escalated that we now move to external resources, meaning, you know, marriage counselors, or do we, you know, consider going to family members? Like, so just the process in which we resolve conflict. And then just looking at slide number 25. So, you know, please understand that, please understand that marriage is not just about the wedding day. It is a lifelong commitment, inshallah. And that's kind of what we were alluding to, or I was alluding to earlier when we talked about the various workshops, is that this is a process, right? So I will now hand it over to, Imam Abdul Hai, and then he's going to talk about the nikah and what is the nikah. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Rufaida, for expounding on some of the key issues there. And having done all this, now we get into nikah, and the nikah, you know, understanding what is nikah. And for that, I will ask Imam Patel to take on and share with us his knowledge and experience regarding nikah, and what is nikah, and what about the khutbah of the nikah and the meher. So if he can touch on some of these key important things in Islamic marriage.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Amma ba'd. I think the last question was very loaded question. And we will talk about that in the topic that is coming up on family relations after nikah, or post nikah life. So that will be covered in that. So all the questions that we will get, we will address them, inshallah, as time permit. We may even extend this to add another workshop. I was just talking about that we may not finish because of the interest and the questions generated. Now, nikah is, as you see earlier about the slide there, nikah ceremony. Oh no, not the nikah ceremony, the other one. What is nikah? It's a legal or religious ceremony that formalizes the decision of two people with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the witness to live as a married couple and share their lives together according to the Islamic teachings. And Sister Rufela mentioned that the public acknowledgement that this couple is now living legally in relationship. In Canada, you need a license, which is a provincial jurisdiction that you have to have a license. And one good thing about the laws over here that the permission, authorization given to any imam, a scholar, to perform nikah, which will be automatically registered as a legal marriage. The imam that is performing the nikah has to have the license. Without license, if a nikah is performed, and that is something that I will be touching on later on this topic afterwards also, that is why it is so important. But it is something that gives you the legal sort of base for your marriage relationship, a marriage certificate. Without license, if a marriage is performed, legal obligation are forfeited. Islamically, yes, your obligation remains as a wife to the husband, but legal rights in Canada would be forfeited if there is no license for the marriage. Now, a lot of people, even many parents, don't know about the license. You have to get a license. They said, yes, it is. You live in a country over here, you have to abide by the law of the land. And any imam performing a marriage without license is actually an offense in this country under section 296, if I remember correctly, of the criminal code. So anyone who wants to perform a marriage without a license is actually committing an offense. So don't go with that. You have to get a license from the city hall, from whichever city you are living in. And the nikah marriage can only be performed 3 days after. They give you a 3-day waiting period, probably not to change mind or whatever the reason may be, but they give a 3 days period that it says that no marriage can be performed until the 3 days are elapsed after the license is issued. So the person who is authorized by the registrar office, Minister of Consumer Relations in Ontario, that person can sign that marriage certificate. So that is important. And the next thing in the marriage is a ceremony that you take Allah as a witness and everyone in the witness of the people. Why witness is that important? So that they know that they are married officially. They are not living in a relationship anymore. They are, which is prohibited in Islam. So the public will not say, hey, these people are living in a relationship, not married. So that's why it is important to have at least 2 witnesses, adult witnesses. And then the public of, and usually you have a ceremony and among friends and a general audience. So they are also witness up to that marriage. So that is also important. Next thing is in the marriage, the bride's consent is taken first, not the groom. That is official. That bride has to agree. Therefore, there is no question of forced marriage in Islam, as people alleged. That yes, there are forced marriages takes place, but it's illegal and Islamic to force any woman to by their parents or any guardian to marry anybody. So brides, if a bride say no, no marriage takes place, then that marriage is usually taken by either a parent or parent appoints somebody as a wakil, as a representative, as a guardian, and that consent is then offered to the groom who accepts her as a wife, and that ceremony is complete. Now, the as far as it is what is called hijab and qabul, the offer and acceptance of the thing that completes the marriage. Once the groom says yes, both says yes. First, the bride says yes to the marriage, and next thing the groom says yes to the marriage. That ceremony is completed. Nikah is completed, and this is important. That's the most important part of the whole ceremony. The khutbah is a sunnah. It can be done without khutbah as well, but khutbah we must follow the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sunnah for barakah, and also to take the nasiha from the khutbah, which I will explain. I think we may run out of time today, but we'll continue inshallah. But I just wanted to explain the other part of this mahar. Mahar is a gift given by the groom to the bride at the time of nikah ceremony. Mahar is required to be specified at the time of marriage, or a certain amount is promised if not paid immediately. It is not a dowry, as is translated in English. There is no translation for mahar, I would say, in English. Maybe in other languages there may be, but in English there is they translate as a dowry. And unfortunately, one nikah I was attending recently, the imam even mentioned dowry of so many dollars. So that is wrong to mention like that. There is no dowry in Islam. Dowry is a custom in Indo-Pak subcontinent, maybe in other countries as well, where the groom demands money from the wife, not the wife. Groom demands from the other way around. And it is completely un-Islamic. It is illegal in India and other countries as well, but the people still practice it. And that's why many of our sisters are not married, because the father cannot pay that amount. This is un-Islamic, and you are answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making such demands. So there is no dowry in Islam. This mahar is a gift that a husband has to give to the wife. It is paid directly to the bride and not to her parents. It is her legal property. Mahar establishes the bride's financial independence from her parents, and in many cases from her husband, who has no legal claim to his wife's mahar. The mahar is often paid to the bride in parts, like it is deferred sometime. And the deferred payment doesn't mean that the obligation is over. That remains a debt on the husband. So the husband has to pay that at some point, even from his, if the husband dies from the assets, from the inheritance to the wife, the mahar amount has to be deducted as well, that is not paid, unless she forgives. This is a wife has a right to forgive them. Okay, I forgive the mahar. You don't have to pay. Then that is good, depending on the relationship, how they forgive or not. But it is something that, so the one that is paid in cash, or say mahar muajjal, and the other, if it is delayed, mahar ghar muajjal, or it is sometimes deferred. Now, mahar has no minimum or maximum limit. It can be $1 or even 25 cents, or even Rasulullah, one Sahabi, radiallahu anhu, he came, he asked Prophet Rasulullah, he said he wants to get married. He says, okay, what is the mahar you pay? He said, I don't have anything. He said, nothing at all, no cash, nothing. He says, well, at least teach her 3 ayats of the Quran. That's the minimum that Rasulullah has specified as that. So teaching is also considered as a mahar, but that doesn't mean that it is usually mahar is translated into a kind of a tangible amount. Yeah, that you have to pay something. It depends. Some countries where they give certain amount of land or maybe house or some grain that they give. So cash is not the only thing that mahar is given. Yeah, in animals sometimes, in some countries in Africa or so, they don't have and say, okay, so many goats will be your mahar or so many. That is also allowed. And so sometimes they say, okay, my chicken farm or some chicken, as long as it has some value that it is given on that. So that is the mahar that is to be paid to the wife, and it remains her property. It is not, and in case of a divorce, it is not considered an alimony. I'll deal with the divorce aspect in the other workshop, that the husband right during the iddat that she can support herself from her. No, husband has to support her in the iddat period as well.
Maher Fatima,
Maher.
what is that?
Maher Fatima is amount that Rasulullah fixed for Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, that over there. So that amount, I don't recall the exact gram at the moment, but that is something that you can fix that as a sunnah. But I would say the mahar is to be paid in the currency you are living in that country. And Maher Fatimi does not add up to that level of standard of living here. Wherever the person is living, you have to be fixed. Not many people fix it back in home country's currency, which is very low, whether it is Taka or Bangladesh or whether it is rupees in India, Pakistan or other places. And that is, no, you wherever the standard of living is, because it is her property and her legal right to have. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back home. So my mahar was done according to my
Yeah.
currency. But when it comes to the talaq,
Mhm.
so when the husband pays the talaq, if he hasn't paid off the mahar,
Yeah.
how will he pay off if he's not in that country?
Well, it is his obligation to pay. If he doesn't pay, you can't recover here in Canada. You can recover, I don't know the laws in Bangladesh, but here in Canada, I can give you a couple of examples that I have seen. People here have said deferred mahar, and the mahar was a big amount, and it wasn't paid in full. So marriage breaks up, it broke it up, and they went to court because the new generation of Canadian young Muslims, the millennials, they don't let it go. He say, hey, you paid, you promised 5,000, 20,000. Sometime for sure, this is a custom in some countries that say big, they announce the mahar. Now, I didn't say that. At the time of nikah, mahar doesn't have to be announced publicly. It can say mutually agreed amount that the imam can say. But if that must be mentioned to the bride, that look, he's giving you this mahar, whatever amount it is. So that fulfills the obligation and the part of the ceremony. But if it is a big amount, sometimes the father-in-law will say, okay, you don't have to pay. Like here in Canada, some imams have experienced, mahar is $100,000, 999,000 deferred. Now the person may not even have $1,000 in the account and making such a big promise, which is long. That means lying. You're lying for an important part of your life, that you are getting a wife and you are deceiving her by making such a promise. So in one case, the imam, the nikah was performed in Jordan. Here's an important case. And the bride, the groom said $5,000 mahar, Canadian. The father-in-law said, 50,000, you don't have to pay. So the imam said 50,000 for 45,000 deferred. After coming to Canada, the marriage broke up. So the wife now suing the husband for $50,000 that was promised. So now in the Canadian license agreement that is issued by all municipalities, there is no mention of mahar. So usually the masajid have a separate marriage certificate in which mahar amount is written, because in the initial stages back in the 70s, I'm talking about when we performed the nikah and the marriage breaking up, the imam had to give an affidavit that mahar was promised, because here is a channel for suing for mahar in Canada. So now this nikah, even though that your question asked perform in other countries, but if their husband is here, they can be sued. So this person, this woman sued her husband for the $45,000 or $50,000 that wasn't paid at all. So the Manitoba court made ruling. There were two rulings in the precedents here. In this case, the husband had spent $35,000 in legal costs for that case. So the judge ruled in his favor. He doesn't have to pay anymore. He has gone through enough trauma. So that was a discretionary judgment. In two other cases here about mahar challenge in the court, Manitoba court ruled that it has to be, if a marriage is a contract, so if there is a prenuptial contract signed, that is evidence of the promise that made for the mahar, and it can be judged on a contract under contract law. The Ottawa court that got the case for suing them for the mahar said, referred back to the community, to local imam, said, sort this out by mediation. And that could be enough. So here, this is more can we talk about, I will talk in the other workshop, final workshop about divorce on this, but mahar is an important, but this, now the millennials here, they don't let it go, the women that say, hey, this was promised. So don't make a big promise for mahar. Pay whatever you can, even $1 or $150 or $200. So that is important that the mahar amount is disclosed to the bride, and it is something that is an obligation. Now, I think we have time for the nikah khutbah, or I think we will have to continue in the next workshop, inshallah.
Yes.
Yeah, this would take some time. So I think this is a subject that requires more than 5 workshops. That because there are a number of issues and number of examples here that I have seen in my 52 years, I'm in 53rd year now in this country, what is happening here in Canada among youngsters, how we can make our marriage ceremony better, how we can make our marriage successful, how consent is taken, because I haven't really fully said, because a lot of time people, who takes the consent from the bride? That's the other thing. You don't send a little child for the consent. You have to have an adult. Usually the father goes as a wakil, as a representative, or the brothers or other relatives, somebody who is mahram to the bride, who she cannot marry usually, because that boundary has to be respected as well. You don't send a stranger, a friend of yours, to take the bride, which sometimes marriage takes place in the masajid against the parents' will, and then they have nobody but to take the consent. But the imam can ask her directly to the consent as well. So this is the consent can be taken through a representative and 2 witnesses, and imam can ask her directly with 2 witnesses of the consent. So this is anyway, inshallah, we will continue in the next workshop as time is permitted. So أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لكم ولسائر المسلمين واستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
Jazakallah khairan, Imam Abdul Hai Patel and Sister Rufaida. Thank you so much for your insight, sharing of your knowledge, immense depth of knowledge that both of you have, mashallah. And to all the participants who have joined us today, please, I would like to request, we did not finish the items that we were supposed to address today. So what we will do is we will move them forward to the next workshop on Saturday. And I would like to request all of you, those who are present here, to please register for the workshop on Saturday, so that a link can be sent to you once again. And once again, I encourage you to complete your feedback, give us your feedback on the workshops, so that we can make them better, we can improve on them, and we can make them more beneficial for everybody's sake, inshallah ta'ala. And and share the message. Please share the message, because this is a very important workshop. Share it with your community, share it with your friends, share it with your family, so that they can all participate. It is for the benefit of everybody. It is not just for the benefit of only those who are trying to get married or who have issues in marriage. It is for everybody's sake, so that those who are trying to prepare to get married, they need to be aware. Those who are getting married need to be aware. Those who have been married for a number of years, they need to be aware of this, the issues that are cropping up, and they need to be prepared as well, you know. And also, you know, as we get older, then we have our children that are going to grow up and be prepared for marriage as well. And so we need to be aware, we need to be informed of the important things that are pertaining to marriage in Islam. And so I would encourage each and every one of you to please share the information with your community, with your friends, with your families, so that we can have a bigger participation, more people attending this workshop. And with that, I would like to request our Imam to make that final dua, inshallah ta'ala.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الله بحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عليت تبارك ربنا وتعالى نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى الله عليه وسلم. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings He has showered upon us, granted us health to live in this life to the best of our abilities. Help us to fulfill your commands, Ya Allah, that would please you. Help us to avoid the command that any acts that would displease you, Ya Allah. Bless each and everyone who have participated in this workshop today. Grant them good health, grant their wishes, whatever that you can, that's permissible from you, your point of view. All those who have contributed to make this workshop possible, bless each and every one of them, Ya Allah, all the volunteers, staff, the committee, everyone, and give us more ideas, give us more resources that we can move this organization forward and help educate the community on this important aspect of their life, the married life. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala mursalin walhamdulillah.
Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakallah khairan. The next workshop is on Saturday, our time, Toronto time, 12 o'clock. I don't know what time it's going to be. I don't